In this video, I'm going to go through the process of exporting out a texture from Substance Painter for Unity. While I am using a tileable texture for the export, this is the same process you would go through for anything that you wanted to export over to Unity. So let's begin. I do have this lovely, gross asphalt texture that I made that I do want to bring over into Unity to put down on my street right here. So the first thing I'm going to do, obviously double check everything looks good. And when you're ready to go, we're going to go to File, Export Textures. First things first, please make sure you know where you're exporting these out to. The default location is usually somewhere that's very hard to find. So make sure that you are putting it somewhere that you know where it's going to be when you're done with this. The next thing you do need to do is make sure that you choose the appropriate template. So PBR Metallic Roughness is great if you're just going to throw it up on Sketchfab, or maybe you just want, the default settings, because maybe you're going to put it over into Maya or something, but this is not what we do for game engines. We need to find the appropriate one for the game engine that we're doing. So if you're doing Unreal, you would choose the Unreal Packed. Even though it's Engine 4, it packs the same for Unreal, but we are exporting out for Unity. So we do have Unity HD or Unity Unreal Render Pipeline, Universal Render Pipeline. Most of the projects, if not all of the projects that you're going to do are going to be for the Universal Render Pipeline. The HD Render Pipeline is not as easy to work with. I do not recommend it until you are really comfortable understanding Unity, and especially like rendering and lighting. So don't use the HD one. What we want to choose is Unity Universal Render Pipeline Metallic Standard. Not Specular, Metallic Standard. So we're going to choose that one. I do like to choose the size myself. I don't like to kind of like leave it up to Substance, so I do want 2K, so I'm going to choose that. I'm going to make sure that my global settings, these are the textures that we actually want exported out. So if you had a multiple material object, you'd see all of the materials here. But since this is only one, there's only one here. I do recommend that when you become a little bit more comfortable, you might want to play with making your own template. I usually have one for myself, mostly because you can change how things are named. That's really handy, but not really super necessary, but it's something to think about for the future, is make your own output template. So we are going to export that out. The important thing that this is doing for us and why we are choosing the Unity Universal Render Pipeline Metallic Standard is that we're going to have our textures packed for us. Game engines do something called texture packing. So let's go to the, we'll start with the Unreal one. Let's take a look at it and let's kind of decipher what it's actually doing. So the first thing that it's going to export out, the first texture is going to be the base color. But it also is going to pack into it, we see RGB base color. So we can see that this is blue. It is associated with the base color. What is this? What is going into the alpha channel? We can see it's kind of like this dark fuchsia color. And if we look, we can see that that dark fuchsia means opacity. So it's packing the opacity channel into the alpha. If you don't have, transparency, opacity, you're just opaque, it's fine. It'll just kind of ignore that, but just be aware that using the Unreal Engine pack, it does pack your opacity into the alpha channel of the base color. Up next for Unreal, we have this thing, it's called, usually it's called AO, or I'm sorry, it's the AORM map. It's what it's usually referred to, because this is its specific packed one. AORM, where in the R, which stands for the red channel, what it's packing in there is mixed AO. So it's packing in the ambient occlusion map, if you do have one, into the R channel. The G channel is going to be your roughness map. That's where AO, R for roughness, and then M for metallic. So we're packing all three of those maps into a single image. There's a lot of reasons why we do this for game engines. The big one is that it saves space. So rather than importing in 3 separate textures for those maps, we're going to only import in 1. So this makes things run more efficiently. It makes your project size smaller. Down here we have the normal. Usually normal is by itself. And if you do have an emissive map, it does spit out the emissive map. So that's an RGB and an RGB for those. So that's how Unreal packs theirs. Let's take a quick look at Unity because it does do it differently. So you can kind of get like, kind of visualize what this is like here. And then if we click up to the Unity Universal Render Pipeline Metallic Standard, you can see it's different. Like it automatically kind of flips to something else because this pipeline, this render, it packs it differently. The base color is the same. We can see that RGB, that's our base color, and our alpha, our opacity, are the same. The big difference here, though, is how it handles that second. Where Unreal has the AORM, Unity uses metallic smoothness. So we can see that it throws the metallic map into the RGB channel. We can see that here, even though it is just a grayscale image. And then it puts the smoothness into the alpha channel. So let's make sure we understand this. Unreal uses roughness. Unity uses smoothness, or it calls it glossiness here, but it's smoothness. What's the difference? They are more or less the opposite. Where a roughness map, white means it is really rough and black means it's super shiny. Where a smoothness map, white means that it's super shiny and black means that it has like a matte, rough finish. So if you try to import in and use a roughness map into Unity, it's not going to work correctly. It's going to be the opposite of what you think it is. And unless you build your own shader in Unity, it's looking for it in the alpha channel of your metallic map. So be aware of that. Normal map is the same and the emissive map is the same. So the big difference between both of them is going to be that second one. So be aware that they are different, and it's important that you are aware of that because they behave differently in the game engines. So you do need to use the one that is appropriate for the game engine of your choice. So choosing it here doesn't actually change your settings. So make sure that you are using the right one under output template. And when you're ready to go, we're going to hit export. We can see what it exported it out as, and usually it names it something really gross because it's, based on that output template and there's a lot more information. That's why it's also kind of handy if you can start eventually working with your own output templates so that you can have it automatically name things a little bit nicer. So let's find where we exported those out to. They are here. So I'm going to quickly rename these. This is the right one. Yes. So these are my old ones. Sorry, this is some old stuff is in here. So let me delete out so I don't get confused. So this is my albedo transparency. I'm going to just rename this one to asphalt. I can never spell this word right. A 1_BC for base color. This is my metallic smoothness. I'm going to name this to asphalt 01 underscore MS for metallic smoothness. Oops, and I accidentally deleted my normal map. Let me re-export that out, but let's do, we don't have an emissive. I don't need to do this one. Let me re-export. Sorry. Happens. Need you. There we go. Asphalt 01 underscore N for normal map, or you can do NM if you want, but that's pretty good. So we have our 3 textures ready to go. All right, I'm going to now import those over into Unity. So let me open up my Unity project. I do not have a textures folder yet, so I'm going to just place it with my materials. Where you place your textures folder is going to be determined usually by who's like your lead, like your environment lead, or maybe your art director, or like a tech art lead or something of like the order. But I usually like to put my texture folder inside of materials because the materials need the textures, so it kind of makes sense to kind of nest it in there. You could also just have a textures folder in your asset directory too. So I'm just going to drag and drop these in. As you import these in, there's a couple things you do want to make sure are good. The big one being that your normal map underneath the inspector, the texture type does need to be set to normal map. Sometimes it does that automatically for you. Sometimes you have to manually do that. Just depends. So yeah, we're good to go. It is fine that the metallic smoothness looks black because we don't actually have anything in the metallic map. All of our stuff is in the alpha. So if we click over to the alpha, we can see that that metallic smoothness has it in the alpha. RGB is black, so that's expected. So don't get like worried that you messed up. No, it's just packed correctly. So now that we have our textures imported, let's go over and update our material. So I'm going to go to materials. I'm going to find that asphalt. And what I usually like to do is I do like to lock my material so that I can easily then go into other folders. And then I can navigate to textures and I can mess with this and easily drop them into the slots. So specifically with, if you're working on this project, you might not have this issue if you're doing your own project and you're just using this as reference, but notice how the base map material does have a default color already on it. We do want to make sure that we set this to white. You can tint your base map with this. It is sometimes a fun way to kind of mess with some things. But please make sure you turn your base map to white if you are working on, this specific project. If not, when you create a new material, this usually isn't an issue. So I'm going to go ahead and drop in my asphalt, the base color into there. Next, we're going to do our metallic map, which remember also has our smoothness in there. And if we're not quite satisfied with how that looks, we do have a slider that we can, mess with this a little bit. But I would recommend not bothering with this until we put in our normal map. So I'm going to drop the normal map in, and it instantly has that pop. And we'll be able to more realistically see, how shiny things are based on that. So I'm going to boost this up. I want it to look a little bit kind of wet, like maybe it had just rained or something like that and the street's a little bit damp. And yeah, that's all those 3 slots are all we need. If we did have an emissive map, we would put that in here. We would turn that on and you can drop a map in there. You can also adjust, not on top of the map. Something else you do need to mess with is this. It's like the glow color too. So just be aware if you do need to do emissive that it is both of them, the map and this. I don't really recommend ever just using a flat color anyway. It looks pretty bad. So you are going to want to mess with some kind of like masking map for your emissive channel. It's going to look a lot better. But we don't need that. We're going to turn that off. So there we have it. If for some reason you are not seeing that normal or smoothness map, be aware that it might be because of your lighting. In Unity, in order to see a normal or smoothness map, you do need to have real-time lights. So if you have just baked lights in your scene, you're not going to see those. So just be aware of that. That is one of the things with Unity that most people aren't aware of when they start getting into it. But by default, you do make real-time lights. So if you don't know what I'm talking about with baked or real-time, most likely you do have baked lights in your scene. Okay, I think that's about it. It should be the basics of importing in textures from Substance Painter into Unity. Again, if you are going to do this for Unreal, you can't just use these same things in here and bring them over into Unreal. It packs them differently. You'll have to re-export them out. If you do want to know how to import stuff over into Unreal, I'm fairly certain that there are videos on this channel that do go through that process. So you can look around for that. But yeah, hopefully now you can have some fun bringing in your own textures created from Substance Painter into your Unity projects correctly.